Everyone, we're going to start this. I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive, and we're here today to sign into law an initiative from the Westchester County Board of Legislators that's been passed, a anti-wage theft bill, which is really valuable, important, progressive legislation, and we're very happy to make that the law of Westchester County in the next few minutes. I'm joined by our Deputy County Executive, Ken Jenkins, our New York State Senator, Shelley Mayer, our New York State Assemblyman, Steve Otis, the two county legislators who are the author of this bill, Nancy Barr, who represents Portchester, Rybrook, and Harrison, this home district, and Chris Johnson, legislator from Yonkers. Have I missed anybody? And Jim Maisano, who's our Director of Consumer Protection, who's going to be speaking a little bit about the bill, what it means in terms of implementation. So I'm going to cover a couple of different things and then turn it over to some of the legislators. And Ann Heekin, who's the director of the Don Bosco Community Center, will be speaking as well on behalf of the advocates and the workers. We're here in a facility that has been identified with worker rights and worker interests over the course of many, many years. For a number of years, my office, when I was in the state legislature, district offices right up the block, and I've gone to church here at Holy Rosary myself. I've shopped at Stop and Shop, and this area is very much a part of the world that I live in every day. And the people who have come here for help and for support have been very much a part of the world that I live in every day. This home improvement licensing law amendment, the anti-wage theft bill, which was passed by the Board of Legislators, was passed unanimously, which means Republican and Democratic support in totality. And that's a very important thing. We see a divisive situation in Washington, D.C. these days, but on this particular piece of legislation, it had full bipartisan support. This bill requires the county to consider judgments against contractors for non-payment or underpayment of employees when examining new license applications and license renewals. Applicants will also be required to disclose any business-related judgments against them, particularly those that already involve non-payment and underpayment. This law is a win-win. This has increased revenues for the county. This is welcomed by the consumers because it helps ensures that they are doing business with a reputable company, and it's welcomed, very important, welcomed by people in the business community because it weeds out the fly-by-night, the bad actors, the folks who are not playing by the rules, who do business in Westchester and undercut the legitimate businesses that play by the rules and do what they have to do to try to develop a profit. More than $1 million a year are recovered for the thousands of workers in the Hudson Valley who have suffered from so-called wage theft under various complaint proceedings with the New York State Department of Labor. This law will help ensure fair wages are paid to the hardworking Westchester contractors. And so for all of these different reasons, in a few seconds, I'm going to be very proud to be able to sign this bill into law as Westchester County Executive. I would like for a couple of folks to be able to speak in sequence. We do have with us our Deputy County Executive, Ken Jenkins, and also we'd like to invite the two legislators who are sponsors to come to the microphone. I don't know if it's working or not. Maybe it's working at least for the media. But Nancy Barr and Chris Johnson. So our Deputy County Executive and the two legislators, please come to the microphone.
Thank you, County Executive. It is certainly a privilege to be here after working so hard on the Board of Legislators as a recovering legislator. And the fact of the matter is that Nancy Barr, Chris Johnson, and the entire Board of Legislators working extremely hard with a colleague of mine, a former colleague of mine, Jim Maisano, and Jim Gaccione is here, John Gaccione is here as well, that this is so important and critical, as the County Executive mentioned, that it's not only protection of the employees, the workers, and making sure that fair wages have gotten to those employees that they have negotiated in the first place. But more importantly, making sure that the contractors are living by the law and actually weeding out the bad actors. So this was welcomed by everyone, as County Executive Latimer said, and more importantly, it's good for everyone in Westchester County. No matter which community that you live in, this is important, and that's why there was bipartisan, unanimous support for it. So I'm proud to be here with County Executive Latimer and the entire team, and I think that this is going to be the start of something that's very important to continue to do in every community. So here in Don Bosco, it's important for all of the work that continues to be done by all of the community partners, but again, with all the advocates, we're going to continue to do this great work. With that being said, I would introduce Nancy Barr, legislator of the area. Legislator.
Thank you. Thank you, Ken, and thank you to everyone who came out today to help us to formalize the signing and the implementation of this new law. I just want to say, to me, as a freshman legislator, it is so exciting to see how local government and communities can work together to really do things to improve people's lives. It really does happen, and this is a perfect example of it. The issue of wage theft has been a problem for a long time, and in the absence of other government intervention, and I know there are state laws, of course, against it, and it's illegal, but community groups have stepped in to help the people who have fallen victim to this really heinous crime. And it's really, I think it has to be very empowering to them to see that, all of their hard work has led to us being able to pass something at the county level that will hopefully move things in the right direction. And to be able to be a part of that for me is really, it's exciting, and it's what I really, had hoped would happen by becoming a county legislator. So I want to thank all of you who have worked on this for years, and those of you who have become involved more recently, and everyone who's here to support this, as well as my colleagues and the administration, which has been incredibly supportive of this as well. Thank you.
One of those partners is Pace Law School, and I want to give you guys a lot of credit and thank you specifically for all the work that you've done as partners on this. Nancy's not the only freshman here. I'm a freshman legislator myself, and one of the first things that you want to do is you want to learn the lay of the land and what goes on throughout the entire county as a county legislator. And you want to know what you have in common with your fellow colleagues. And so one of the first conversations I had with Legislator Barr was that when we passed this bill, we would both wear pink. And we got there because when we talked about our communities, we knew that there were people who weren't getting their fair share. We knew that there were people who were doing work, who were getting up every morning and going to work like you and I, but were coming home shortchanged. And so we knew that we had to do something about that. And then we talked to contractors and we talked to business people who employ those individuals. And they said, we want a fair playing field, because when we pay our employees, we have to charge the people that we're doing business with. And if they don't pay their employees, then they don't have to make that charge. And so they're undercutting us. And so this made sense on all facets, from a business perspective, to make sure that people are getting the services that they're paying for. This made sense from an employee perspective, to make sure that when you do work, you get paid. And this made sense from a County Board of Legislative freshman perspective, because we wanted to come into office and we wanted to do the people's work. We understand that there have been legislators who are now county executives and deputy county executives and work in the administration who have done a great job to make sure that this county's moved forward. But there's always more work to be done, and we are glad that we were able to receive that torch and move forward in this vein. And so we're excited to be here today. I'll tell you that my first experience in government, I was a staffer, and I remember answering the phone, and it was a day laborer, and they said, we need to organize. And going out and talking to individuals and organizing and helping set up that office was one of my first experiences in government. And so I'm proud to stand here today knowing that I'm continuing that same work. So thank you all.
I want to make sure we recognize former Rise City Mayor Ted Dunn, who's with us here today. State Senator Shelley Mayer has a little touch of laryngitis. I sat with her this morning at breakfast in New Rochelle, and I think it's a little harder to get to today, so she's got a conservative voice, but her colleague in the state legislature, State Assemblyman Steve Otis, also a former mayor of Bryan, who's up the block, will share a few thoughts, and then we'll go to Ann.
I'd like to congratulate George and Chris and Nancy and the county board for doing a great thing. It's very significant that we're here at Don Bosco and significant that we're here in Portchester, because Portchester, with a coalition of churches and unions, started a no pay, no way campaign a few years ago. I've been here at events in front of Don Bosco, and what it comes down to is to not pay the wage, to perpetuate wage theft is a moral crime. It's not just an economic crime. You're saying to somebody who's done a day's work, we're not going to pay you because we think we have the power not to pay you, or you don't have the ability to fight us. It really is immoral. And so this is a significant thing that the county is doing, building on laws we have in the state. But wage theft is really a local crime. It happens in individual settings, and individual harm, often people that feel helpless. So congratulations to everybody. I'm thrilled to be here. And also congratulations to many of the advocates who've been part of this movement that are here today. We all deserve a round of applause for everyone here for making something good happen and protecting people getting a fair wage. Thank you.
We all owe a great debt of gratitude to Dr. Ed Heekin. I've known her for over 20 years. She has been a stalwart advocate for workers and workers' rights day after day after day. She's worked with all the people in this community. She is director of this program, and she has been a moving force behind this issue. Ed, please, on the stage.
So I want to just, for a couple of seconds, just really raise up the community that represents the Labor Alliance of Westchester, and make it very, very clear that despite our good works as solo agencies over many, many years in Westchester, that things did not start to happen in a meaningful and productive way until we became unified. Right? And so there's one message for today, which is that there's power in numbers, there's power in the different sets of experiences that different agencies have had, and there's power in the support that we lend one another, because we have days like this one, unfortunately not enough of them. More of our days are spent, going back at cases to try to restore funds, stolen funds to our workers. There can be periods of real darkness and discouragement because you're not making enough progress, and because each time that you fail to recover a stolen wage, you know what that looks like, right? That's a family who's going to go without adequate food for a period of time, or a family who's not going to be able to make their rent for a period of time, or children who are not going to get the winter coat that they need because the season has changed. So this gets very, very real and very human. And every one of our cases, we refer to cases with a case number, but we refer to cases with a name, right? We refer to cases with a name, an address, a family history, a history of how those wages were violated. And that's what gets us going every day, right? Is that it's a human justice issue that we as a community center and our partners as community centers in their localities are committed to standing behind. Now, the truth is that our best work is when it's done in partnership with people who have the power, like our wonderful legislators here today, our county executive, who have the power to help us to move some of these initiatives that we're working on informally in order to deter wage theft and to push them forward and to really make them a policy, place something into law that's going to not only do what we can do in our 5 different markets or our 6 different markets, but make it the law of the land for Westchester County. So this is no longer our initiative. This is no longer our bill. This bill belongs to every resident of Westchester County. And every resident of Westchester County ought to feel proud, right, to have this type of progressive legislation passed, and ought to get on the side of defending the worker. I often think, as a homeowner in Westchester, I wonder how many times I've hired a home improvement contractor paid what, my bill said I owed him, and never knew that perhaps some of the labor that was part of that invoice never found its way to the men or women who were hired to do that work. So this is everybody's issue. This is a moral issue. This is a justice issue, and this is a way for Westchester County to stand up alongside of a couple of other progressive municipalities across the country and make it clear, as we like to say so often, no pay, no way.
Our final speaker before we sign the bill is our Consumer Protection Director, Jim Maisano. Jim served as a Westchester County legislator for 21 years with great distinction. He served as Minority Leader, Minority Whip. He is the Republican Party, but he is granted service in this administration because of his outstanding work. We're very pleased to have him responsible in this department. And Jim, would you share some of your thoughts about the bill?
Thank you. Thank you, George. So I'm the guy that has to enforce this law tomorrow, along with John Gassione back, my deputy. And so let me tell you the good news. We're excited to enforce this law. We want to enforce this law. We had such a great relationship with the advocates throughout all phases of the journey, and the professor and the PACE law students. We've been working together from day one on this because it's a no-brainer, right? This is the no-brainer of no-brainers. Someone gets up every morning and they go to work and they don't get paid. As somebody doesn't pay them and hurts that family, they should be penalized. You can't get away with that in our society. So our department, from myself and John, but all the way down to our inspectors, I can tell you everybody's excited to get to work on this law starting tomorrow. And frankly, as John and I told, our first meeting on this law was my first week when I got appointed by George as Consumer Protection Director. I was only 3 days old, didn't even know where my office was. But we had a great meeting because I think they came and thought they were going to persuade us, and we were excited about the bill as they were in our first meeting, because think about it, we're the Consumer Protection Department. We're supposed to protect consumers. That's our job. And this law is going to help us do a better job of protecting consumers. Because think about it, a bad actor who doesn't pay their employees, that's not somebody you want showing up at someone's house to do work on any project because they're going to rip off the consumer. This is a bad actor. They need to be eliminated from the marketplace. And it's unfair to the good people out there that work hard every day to pay their employees, to do everything right and follow the law. So as of tomorrow, I can assure you that we are going to aggressively pursue wage theft violations in Westchester County. And if you're somebody that wants to get a license to be a home improvement contractor in Westchester, and you got a bunch of wage theft Department of Labor decisions against you, you better think something different. Because we're going to aggressively license the people who play by the rules and follow the laws. And when you don't follow the laws and you don't pay your employees, don't expect to get a license in Westchester County. Thank you.
I'm going to ask Nancy and Chris to sit on either side of me here, and everybody else come around. Nancy, bring them up here. This is the official photo shot, I'm told, that has to be done. And I have the pleasure of signing the bill for the I want to point out that I don't have very fancy pens here. I've got a big pen, and a pen I picked up someplace. I don't know where. This is not as cool as every other pen we have. Excuse me. This is a local law that amends Article 16 of Chapter 863 of the laws of Westchester County. It has been reviewed and presented as having passed the Board of Legislators on November 19th by a vote of 17-0. And this is the 29th day of the month of November. And by the authority granted me by the voters of this county, this bill is now law. press has any questions for us, let's stand and address any questions that they have for us. Guys, don't disappear. Folks, we've got to open it up to some press questions as a press conference. We like our press, even if they give us hard questions. We think they're totally entitled to do this if they want to. It is a free press. So are there any questions from anyone in the press? Yes? Jim, are you in a position where you can have that one first?
So, in our licensing process, right, we do a full background check. And one thing we'll be checking in the background check is whether they have any wage theft violations. If you have wage theft violations, I said earlier, don't expect to get a license in Westchester County. So it's a huge penalty, right? If you're a business that doesn't pay your employees his wage theft violations, you're not going to get a license to do home improvement contracting work in Westchester.
So say if I'm a bad contractor, someone complains on me, you'll get a violation, and that will prevent you from getting a future license, or will it take away the license?
But it's a good question. So the answer is yes and yes. If we get evidence that someone has a license and they're not paying their employees, that's a license we'll look to suspend. And then when your license comes up for renewal, if you have wage theft violations, that'll be one of the factors. By the way, there's a lot of factors on our background check. It's a very detailed background check. But wage theft will be one of the things we look at on a background check that could possibly deny someone a license.
Just how bad is the problem?
Well, you know, one of the interesting things, and one of the reasons why this relationship between the county government and the advocates is so important, that's going to continue, as like I said, tomorrow and going forward, is we need their help to get these violations that are up at the New York State Department of Labor. These aren't judgments that are recorded with the county clerk. So we need help to get those into our office. They go right into the file, and then they'll be part of the review when those home improvement contractors want to get a license. So this relationship is going to be really important every day going forward.
And I don't know if Ann or somebody else in the advocacy community wants to address the element of how widespread this is. That was part of the question. Ann, are you in a position where you can address that?
Well, I think, just to keep it local, but to expand from, maybe just some of a few markets, when we did a FOIL request in 2014, I think thereabouts, we had done one we began one just for Portchester, and then we did a second one for Westchester County, and there were over 1,200 contractors and other types of businesses on the list that were considered that had outstanding judgments against them. Okay, which is what you're hearing in terms of a basis for either revoking or suspending or denying a license. So we can continue to access the actual outstanding judgments as they exist on the books right now. And then what we can also do is, as we are filing cases with the Department of Labor, we can make sure that the Consumer Protection Department knows and can flag those names. We might not be able to actually take a license away because we don't yet have the outstanding judgment, but we can have a list of people who are on our list, right, who are potential problem contractors that we will at some point look to delicense.
Any other press questions? I know those are the questions in the community, or comments, but I want to take press questions first. Anyone else? Yes, Andrew.
Do you have an example of like a contractor who didn't pay like an entire staff, or just like was it instances like that were happening?
Who wants to? Can you do an anecdotal of examples of what some of the individuals have done?
I mean, these cases come to us one person at a time. Right. So I mean, I suppose you could file a class action suit against a contractor, but that's not anything that we've seen. So how we know what's happening in terms of the wage theft violation in this sector is that we are doing intakes with workers in amongst all of our community partners across the county. We are filing the initial claim with the Department of Labor, all right? So we're there on the ground floor. We're helping the worker to understand that there is some action that they can take. We usually, before we file a claim, attempt to negotiate some kind of settlement directly with the home improvement contractor. So we do give that person that opportunity. More often than not, they ignore it because they know that the system is so lengthy in terms of the Department of Labor process that the worker will probably disappear before any kind of legal judgment gets issued. And that oftentimes is true.
Just one quick question. You're suspending the license for how long? Do you know?
You want to talk to me?
Yeah, sure. The license are 2-year terms. So if we suspend it, right, it's in the middle of the 2 years, or when they come up for renewal, there's another 2-year term.
May I add, Mr. Latimer?
Yes, please go ahead.
Pardon me. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Kevin, and I'm an advocate at the Community Resource Center of Mamaroneck, New York. The first question was, how bad is this problem? Is that correct? Did I get that? It's the daily bread. This happens all the time, every single day. Multiple workers, multiple job sites, and it's complicated because one worker may work at different work sites, and the headquarters or the main office might be one different site, and they don't know which address. It's a mess. It happens every single day. And to the other question about the severity, you said something like, does this happen to entire staffs? There's different industries, obviously. So we have day labor and general labor, which is generally landscaping and outdoor type of work. There's the restaurant industry. And in the restaurant industry specifically, at Community Resource, we have actually created several class actions over the years with several different restaurant workers who have been stiffed or otherwise not paid their wages either overtime or at all. So yes, it happens all the time, and it does happen in larger groups. And when we can catch them, when we have the ability to kind of have people come in and have the confidence to speak to us and actually denounce the wage theft, that's amazing. The problem is we don't really know how widespread it is. We have the figures as we have been very wonderfully given, and honestly we can estimate that those figures are actually just like a baseline. We don't know how many cases there truly are, how many workers are really at risk, or how many employers really, this is part of the business model of how people even operate, so we don't even know. The problem goes really deep. The best I can tell you is it's every day, and yes, they're having cases where entire staffs have not been paid.
Kevin, tell us your last name as well.
My last name is Duarte Chon. Thank you.
So you want to talk to Kevin later, get the spelling.
No problem.
Are there any other questions from the press? Anyone else in the press? You're welcome to interview any of these individuals one-on-one as we go forward. Any other comments that anyone would like to make?
Well, my question was going to be, one thing is going to be, if there is going to be a fine besides the removal of the license, and also how there is going to be the follow-up. There is going to be who is going to control if this contractor finally are going to pay to the workers the wage they owe.
Could Jim explain how this fits into the ongoing situation with the state Department of Labor?
Well, there isn't, so the law that just was signed gives the Consumer Protection Department the ability to either revoke, suspend, or not grant someone a license. There's no fine piece of it. But the advocates work very diligently when they get the awards from the State Department of Labor to get the people paid. I mean, that's a fair statement. So, and any kind of mediation role the Consumer Protection Department could do to help people get paid too, we're happy to be engaged in that process as well.
And if I could just add one general point about this. If a contractor has his license suspended and he's not able to do work, he's going to want to have that license reestablished. And if they come in and they have a conversation and they can identify whatever settlements that were not made and they make good on those settlements, then they have the right to reestablish the application. So the financial penalty is the loss of the license and the inability to work legally. And then, of course, if you get caught doing it without the license, then there's another set of penalties that follow. So that's really the economic connection and the economic hook. Yes. So if there are no other questions as a group, you're welcome to interview anybody individually. Well, John, okay, you get the last word, John.
Oh, real quickly. You've all spoken about judgments in the Department of Labor. Will village court findings also count in the process?
Yes.
I assume they will, yes. So, all right, thank you very much for your time. Feel free to welcome it. Congratulations to all you've advocated.